Today it will be a very brief and very fast journey through all the Irish prehistory and all the features that you can encounter while walking on the hills or while climbing on the hills. It's not just for the hill walkers, the climbers actually can benefit as well. They sometimes don't know where they climb. Today you're joining me, my name is Ania Bakiewicz. You're also joined by Helen Lawless from Mountaineering Island. She is the Access and Environmental Officer for Mountaineering Island, and Helen was so good, and she's helping me with the chat and Q&As. So if I'm not able to look at the screen, she will kind of tell me what's important. And then Laura Griffin from Mountaineering Island as well, training administrator. So they're gonna help me, and it's great to see you, great support. Quickly about myself, my name is Ania Bakiewicz. I work for Mountaineering Island as a women in sports, and I only started in January, and after 2 months, well, unfortunately the pandemic started, and I was hoping to help many women in their careers in mountaineering, and created loads of events, but unfortunately COVID happened. We had to actually go online into webinars. So I was thinking, why not? My past is in archaeology. So I said, okay, I'm gonna organize an archaeological webinars, as Mountaineering Island creates loads of webinars for hill walkers and climbers, and facilitating all the training. So this is one of them. Previously, I was working as an outdoor instructor and a climbing instructor and climbing coach. My background is, well, in outdoor instructing. I started my training in BIFI, in a College of Further Education, and I got the basic level of skills. And after then, I think it was 2013, if I'm right, I went to Tollymore and I did the outdoor instructor development program. And since that, I was working as an outdoor instructor. And before that, I came to Ireland as an archaeologist. And I have master's degree in medieval archaeology. It's really musical finds from the area of medieval Poland. So that was my specialty, very narrow. I'm not trained in Ireland. I'm not an Irish archaeologist. So please excuse me if sometimes you will feel that there are loose ends. But I worked in archaeology for 10 years, having a Polish-based and Irish-based fieldwork experience. I work on the motorways on the building on motorways in Ireland. So for example, the M3 project, the bypass of Newry, I work on the bogs for Bordamona as well, which was absolutely brilliant, a castle in Carlingford. So in this presentation, I'm gonna include a little bit of pictures from my own experience and from my archaeological background. I just want to keep this a little bit informal. Think of me as a past archaeologist who has some expertise to offer, but I'm not 100% an expert to date. And then, guys, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. I might answer them at the end. And then maybe there will be some that I can answer at the start. And then I think we're gonna just kickstart. Oh yeah, if you will feel that this was good and you would like to know more specific information, I can run another webinar at a later time. So it's really up to you. And we're gonna start because we have 12,500 years to cover of the Irish archaeology. Fashion is always important, you know, safety fashion, loads of yellow, loads of mud. This is me around 2009 or 2008 site, Collierstown, somewhere in County Meath for the M3 motorway project. Beautiful island, the dream of every tourist. Beautiful green fields and fantastic feature here, wall, We don't know how old it is. There's possibly a castle somewhere there on the island. And then you can actually see in the grass plowing, linear kind of features here, plowing, maybe something circular here as well. Yeah, so, and some stones, we don't know what they are, you know, so that's the dream of every tourist coming to Ireland and see the green grass, the sheep, and loads of archaeology. Yeah, so guys, my idea is to keep it brief, but I gathered information or sites from around all the mountains. I hope all the mountains in Ireland. So we're gonna go from Rathlin Island to Donegal, Sperrins, Mourne Mountains, Wicklow Mountains, Kerry, Wicklow, Dingle. What is an archaeological feature? It is a result of human activities that was used before, but it's abandoned, and there are loads of deposit layers gathered on top of it. And sometimes the archaeological features, sites, are visible, and sometimes, because it's very simple to see them, there are castles, there are ditches, there are banks, there are standing stones, there is rock art on it, but sometimes it's not so obvious because it might be completely overgrown by the trees, so you can just easily pass by. Sometimes it's overgrown by gorse and bushes, and sometimes just it's completely leveled down by plowing. How to spot an archaeological feature on the ground? Okay, so actually, yeah, this is the mountains on a good day. This is what we actually hill walkers and climbers going through. This is the normal island. This is not the touristy stuff. This is on the good day. And this is on the bad day. Not much difference. Yeah. Okay, but if you're a tourist, this is what you expect, the island. You have the big Anglo-Norman castle, you have a tomb, you have some art marks on the ground, and then here I think is some monastic city. Okay, but what to actually do to actually recognize a feature? We might go bypass this mount or a hill, we don't know, or this circular feature, or the kind of features in the field. Okay, so as I said, it is usually very obvious to actually notify the stone, standing circles, churches, cairn, castles, shelters, sheepfolds, but what to do when we actually don't know that we're actually on an archaeological site. So as I say, the problem starts when the feature was leveled to the ground. As hill walkers and climbers, we know navigation. We navigate from place to place. We fine-tune our eye to the ground, and we know when we're walking, we're trying to think, okay, now the ground is rising, now it's falling down, there is a slope to my right, there is slope to my left, or it's going up. So the same happens when you want to find out an archaeological feature. You might actually even go onto your knees and start to kind of play a peekaboo with the feature, and just go to your knees and go to the level of the ground and start raise your eyes higher and higher, and then try to kind of pick up a feature. They might be linear features like here. If you see something like that and you go across it, that's supposed to put you into suspicion that it is something. It's too linear, and then it repeats all the time. Same here and same here. You can actually see the squeaky lines. They're straight on, but they're definitely mark something. So we also know that there is a different sunlight during the year in Ireland, and there are different seasons. That could be something. That's just examples of what is a feature, but you might just go across and not really think about it. Some kind of, trees on the water, just, you know, limestone somewhere. Okay, so this is it. Okay, so how to recognize a feature? So as hill walkers, we know that there is a different kind of quality of light during the 4 seasons in Ireland. Even Ireland gets 4 seasons, sometimes in one day. But during the low sun during the winter and early morning in winter or late, the sun is very low and casts long shadows. So that fact helps to spot archaeological features, because all the uneven places can be identified and marked by shadows. The same soil marks. You may sometimes see, actually, maybe I go to the previous one. Okay, so guys, look at this photo here. It's taken, it is an aerial photo. I used a lot of area archaeology archives. They're really good, but you can actually climb to the top of a hill and just look at the distance. And take your time, fine tune your eyes, and start to look for something that is regular. It could be squeaky lines, it could be circular, semicircular, but it could be going straight on. Okay, so for example, this is a picture of a little bit of winter spread and low sun. So you can actually see the long shadows pronouncing all the fieldwork here, the banks, whatever they are. This is actually here. This is a later medieval church. It could be 12th, 13th century, but the field here shows that there was possibly something here and a system of some fields or settlement connected previously with it, okay? And then, yeah, long shadows here. This is a really good example of a ring fort, completely incorporated with a current 21st century house, but completely respected by the landowners. It's not plowed. And then this is a fantastic example. So for example, here you can see this little mound pronounced by the shadow. The same here. Snow can be really helpful as well, and this is absolutely brilliant example of it. Standing on the top of a hill, you're going on to the top of Slieve Berna or Slieve Foy or I don't know, Lugnaguilla or any of the bends after a little snowfall, and you can just look down, look around and just see if you can identify something. So the circular stuff, that might be prehistoric. It looks like maybe little settlements, little huts, could be mounds as well. So anything that is circular possibly will be prehistoric. And anything that has straight, very straight pronounced lines can be early medieval or Iron Age. Could be Neolithic as well, but less likely. This is actually Hadrian's Wall. And then a beautiful, beautiful two-valley ring fort on it. And there is something else here as well. So you can actually see how the sun pronounce and the light pronounce all the features. So you can see the whole complex here. Yeah, of course it's not island, but that's okay. Another beautiful example, just at the top of this beautiful, beautiful here spur. Yeah, we have the features here. And then if you look in the distance, you might actually see something semicircular here, a ring fort, and then loads of things over here. So to spot them, you actually have to fine tune your eyes and just, you know, sit at the top, have your coffee, have your sandwich, and just enjoy the views and play a little bit of an area archaeology. So, okay, that's a field system, ancient field system as well. That's a black and white photo. And then I really like this photo. The shadows are nicely pronounced. And then this is Nauts, the megalithic complex near Newgrange. Okay, the other things are the crop marks. So crop marks, positive crop marks and negative crop marks. Positive crop marks are there where the soil was disturbed and there is loads of fertile soil, sediment in it, and the crops are actually growing better. So sometimes even in the garden, you can see it after a drought or after a rain as well. But generally the crop marks, the more disturbed ground, the higher the crops or the grass. So standing on the top of a hill or just walking through the field, you can actually identify those weird patches. And this is an indication of a possible archaeological feature. And then the negative crop marks are where there is disturbance in the ground and there could be a wall running or some hard construction made of stone, and then there is not much of a topsoil or fertile ground on it, so the crops don't grow that well. So that could be an indication as well. Okay.
Anya, can I ask a question on the, well, it's from the chat really. Peter Wood was wondering how many of these features are currently marked on the Ordnance Survey maps?
Yes, some of them are, yes. So I'm gonna talk through it. Yes, they are. I have loads of maps here as well, and I'm gonna cover it. Most of them are, but I'm gonna give you an example of some that were just recently discovered, and you never know if they are on the new maps or not. But usually they're supposed to be marked on the OS Ordnance Survey maps. Yeah.
Thanks, Anya.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Helen. Have a look here. Very high crop marks and then a beautiful ring structure. Beautiful, classic one. That's really distinct. And then, okay, crop marks again. So you can see some weird, really weird system, possibly runs all the way here. We cannot see it. Yeah, some kind of structure, and then positive crop marks here, positive crop marks here, loads of disturbance here, human activity, and then possibly a circular house or a barrow, maybe walls or paths. And then the question about features that maybe are not yet on the OS maps or even Google Earth. This is picture taken in 2018 in the drought, and I'm not gonna say it yet, but guys, have a look how circular it is. It's a beautiful circular double circles, double rings. There is some entry house or a gate here. There is possibly something here at the entrance, and then here, and then there is more stuff here. And then again, more positive crop marks. So this photo, this one, it's actually from the UK, the same time, 2018, the big drought in Europe. This is Ireland, here, another, and here, and here. It's just so much of archaeology, so much activity, and the same photo here. You possibly are guessing what this is. It was on the news, all over the news, but I won't tell you yet. You see that the farmer plow their fields. You may actually go for a little stroll on the edge or stand on a higher hill and just have a look for any features, because plowing brings actually the feature up as well. So you can see a circular things here, then here, then this is something big, and then possibly something going here as well. It should be checked as well. Archaeology uses sonars and radars as well to combine with aerial archaeology, and it's usually very accurate. So in many cases, the features are actually identified and put into the National Monument Register, but nobody needs to dig them out, because digging means actually we have to destroy them, and it's better that they're actually underneath the ground, preserved. In the context of the plowing and what can you actually find while walking on the hills after plowing or after the rain brings features up as well. So I have this finds from all over Ireland. So I found them without any archaeological context. They might be at the site of a field or an archaeological site, but they will be found on a spoil heap and nobody will really know where they're from. So there are no use for dating or any context. So this is absolutely beautiful flint. I don't know if you can see it. So I found this. So it looks like a lovely kind of a flake. Sorry, my boyfriend found it. He's sitting there at the front and was shouting. He's like, I found it. I don't remember, but okay, he found it. Okay, so there is the worked edge here on this side. I don't know if you can see it. And then, so the edges here are worked, and that's what makes an artifact. This was used, this flint tool, it was used, and I don't know what for, but it's clearly still very sharp. I could actually cut something. Possibly here, possibly the end was very sharp and could make a hole or something, but it's broken now. So maybe that's why this tool was disused, I don't know. So that's one, so that's flint. Then pottery. So this is a really small piece of pottery found. Unfortunately, it's not from Ireland. It's really well made. It's dry and really little inclusion. It's really well burnt. But you can actually see a rim. Yeah. And possibly here at the bottom, somehow glazed or something. It's possibly from my extensive travels to the Mediterranean. Okay, so in Europe or in Mediterranean, this would be considered as rubbish. In Ireland, because the soil is very acidic and it doesn't retain much of organic features, including pottery. A little piece of pottery like here can date the whole site. Can you imagine? Yeah, just because of the acidic peatland ground in Irish uplands in Ireland. Yeah, so this is a treasure. Yeah. Okay, then the other piece of pottery. So this is a post-medieval pottery. So it could be as old as 17th, 16th century, maybe older. It's made on a wheel and then glazed inside, fired of course, and glazed. It's completely different, but I found it as well. You can find it, you can come across this while walking. This is a piece of a pipe, clay pipe. Clay pipes were very, the production was very popular, people smoke a lot, and they're really, they crumble, so yeah, you can see it better. So there are a lot of them. So this is just the part of the stem that you can see. And then the part of the bowl, it's actually broken, but this is a little kind of holder for it. Yeah, and then there is this hole for the air. Okay, and moving on. There was okay, so I have another flints. You can see it. It's not really worked or anything like that. It was possibly stroked. There's a little bit of a core on it as well. And I don't know what it is, but we think that it might be a flint that was used in the muskets that would sparkle and fire the gun. So it just looks like one of them. There are different shapes of them, but that's just something to think about. Then I have another one as well with worked edge, beautiful, beautiful flake, different kind of flint as well. I don't actually know the name of the flint type, but you can possibly see a little bit of the worked edge here, but unfortunately it got broken and thrown away, and that's how I found it. It was already disused. Okay, and then piece of masonry. So you can see maybe here the edges. Yeah, and it's actually stone. It's super heavy in comparison to others. And then a slate. So I know that in Ireland or even in Europe, the nice cottages, they still are covered. The roof tiles are made of slate. But in the past, in prehistory, in Middle Ages, this could be a part of things where people scribe things as well. So something interesting. Okay, so that's my finds. That's my finds, and now we can move to the software. The Google Earth, it's the most obvious one. This is what I absolutely love to use, and spying on archaeological features around the globe. So it's called the Google Earth, and I prepare a tiny bit of presentation just to show you the possibilities of the software. So for example, I'm gonna go here. So we're going to Mesolithic site in Northern Ireland, Mount Sandal on the River Bann. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Okay, so that's the place, that's the picture from the site. Many levels of phases of using the same site. And that's the reconstruction. I'm gonna be talking about this later. Okay, and then maybe a different site. So I absolutely love it. And we are in Alice and Gwendolyn. It is an exciting one. Okay, the other one, so that's the Google Earth. The other one that I would highly recommend, and somebody already asked me about it, is the historic environmental viewer, which you can obtain for free now from the OPW website or the Archaeology website or the Department of Arts and Heritage website. So this one is really good as well, because you can play here with the layers, maps, and set the kinds of monuments you are looking for. And then the map as well, base map, OSE map. You can get the digital globe as well, and covers the whole island of Ireland. And then you can just, let's say are we in Belfast? Okay, near Belfast. And it was a battlefield, Carricknina. I'm sorry for my Irish English. It's a little bit rusty. Sometimes there are photos as well. So it brings you to the monument sites as well. So that's great. And then the new share is something more local. So it's the Ring of Gullion, absolutely brilliant for Neolithic sites, for passage tombs, for any kind of tombs, Neolithic tombs. So we have the interactive map here, and you can use it and look at this. You can use maps, hard copies of maps. So I can start with the maps that I actually got a few days ago from Jane Carney. Jane, thank you so much. The maps are absolutely brilliant in any way, and in most artistic way as well. So there are a few maps of Buren, Kinwara, and there was something else, but mostly Buren. So have a look at this. They look like that. And sometimes there are no grid lines in it, but there are contours, and they're absolutely beautiful. Now, they have a legend, very detailed legend. I'm not sure if you can see it. Yeah, and it actually says, yeah, now, very detailed, and you have ring forts, castles, tombs, And also at the back, there are drawings and descriptions of some of the features, most representative features. So I would really, for every hill walker and a climber as well, I would really suggest to get the maps, because they're absolutely brilliant. Then the other map, OSC map 1 to 25, first edition, and this one is from Mount Brandon. And what's interesting for me is that the names, so in a legend, the names, there are no names in the legend, and legend only states with a red dot that it is a feature. But if you look at the map is with description, and it's in Irish, and I can read it. But thankfully, I was so lucky that Jane lent me her maps, and there was some, she gave me her maps, and there was translation from Irish to English, so I can use it. But just to let you know, if you're buying a map, don't be surprised, because it might be actually in Irish. The other maps, OSC map, this is for Wicklow. This is the one that I use because I'm very close to Wicklow Mountains. So the descriptions are actually in red as well, marked as a red dot, and then it says in red Standing Stone, Graveyard, Holywell. So there are actual names on it. But sometimes they are very brief. So you can actually see the Siffingan passage tombs here marked. But sometimes they don't actually say if it's archaeological feature or not, because some cairns might be not really archaeological. They can be current, just marks of way for hill walkers. So that's not archaeology. I have OS map from Northern Ireland, 1 to 25 scale. The archaeology here is really nicely pronounced, and it's actually in the legend. It's marked, but also there are beautiful descriptions on the maps. I don't know if you can see it. For example, Cashel and Souterrain. Yeah, it actually says what you can encounter there and come across. So from a hill walking point of view, it's actually nice to take a bearing on that stuff, and then that could be your destination point. Another map, this is from Jane as well. So Glendalough, Glen Malure, topographical map with loads of contours, and then different colors as well, so you have to fine-tune your eye first to the map. It's great for contours, and then the features, archaeological features, I can't find any now. Oh yeah, they are marked in red. So for example here, Bullaun Stone. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, here. They will be marked like that. And a little dot just next to it, green dot. Harvey maps, and Harvey maps, maybe I can just say that there are Harvey maps as well, and in Harvey maps they are nicely actually describe exactly what it is. So for example, close to Linan there is megalithic tomb and a cyst on very close to the Linan hill. Can actually see it here. So different maps would have different description and markings. So yeah, it's good to know.
Anya, could I just mention something that's come up there in the chat on maps?
Yeah.
The east-west maps in particular are really good for anybody interested in archaeology and other historical features, and they've been well researched.
Yeah.
And the coverage is improving. East West have just this week published a map of Connemara. They've already covered the Nathans, Clare Island, Knockmeal Downs, Gouties, Blackstairs, and all of the Wicklow Mountains. So if any of those are your areas, they're definitely worth getting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's a big help. To be honest, I would mostly use the hard copies, and then after actually being on a walk, after then I would use the software like Google Earth, because I was just interested in what I saw. So the software will be my kind of second source. For some of you, might be a little bit controversial what I put there, 10,500 to 8,000 BC. 10.5 because there are not many finds except for one from Ireland. And for many, many years, for hundreds of years, there were no finds from Paleolithic times. But in 2016, this is actually what Ireland would look like at the end of Paleolithic times. It would just look like tundra. This picture on the left actually looks like Ireland to me now in winter. So I don't know such big difference. Well, it would be called the end of an ice age with the ice retreating north, super cold, big animals roaring like the giant red deer, woolly mammoths, and then brown bear that is extinct in Ireland, a wolf. And in 2016, there was a big discovery, rediscovery. In the Alice and Gwendoline cave in 1903, archaeologists found many bones of a brown bear. And for hundreds of years, somehow they couldn't analyze it. And finally, Dr. Dowd from IT Sligo analyzed the bones, and what she discovered was absolutely fantastic. That in 1903 they found loads of bones of a brown bear, and they were trying to analyze it. And even then, in 1903, they actually noticed marks on a particular part of a bone from a brown bear. It was a piece of bone from a knee, patella, and there were 6 or 7 straight, like knife cut marks. And they already put that in their notes that they look like human. But they have no other proof. There were no other kind of habitational finds from humans, so they didn't do anything about it. And then Dr. Dowd analyzed it again and then sent it to different laboratories around the world. So to Hungary, to University of York and British Museum as well for analysis. And then they were also checked against the carbon dates as well by Chronocentre at the Queen's University Belfast. And they all confirmed the date, which was 10,500 BC. And previously, prehistory or archaeologists in Ireland thought that there was no Paleolith in Ireland, that there was no human habitation. So this is a massive discovery. This is like having a second Earth to me, discovery. So these are possibly the people who discovered it. I can imagine. I haven't done much research on the picture itself. And this is the cave, Alice and Gwendoline Cave. There is a museum now, you can go and visit. And this is the patella. So the thing about why this is so significant is, the point is that the analysis confirmed that when the bear was killed, they started to butcher it straight away. So these were very fresh cut marks on the bones. You can actually see straight edges. No animal makes such straight on cut edges. It is a sharp knife. So it was a knife-like sharp tool cutting through the tendons in the knee. So it was a fresh animal The cuts were done still on a fresh bone, and they can be checked against the radiocarbon dating, and that's what made it possible and significant. People in Paleolithic ages would live in caves. They were follow the big animals, and they would be maybe sometimes live in temporary wooden and leather shelters. Eat a little bit of the plants and forest fruits, fish. How do they come to island? Ice Age. The levels of the sea were quite low, and there were two like natural bridges connecting Northern Ireland with Scotland, south of Ireland with Wales, and people could just cross it with a dugout canoes or made of skin canoes. It wasn't really that far. Also, at the end of Pleistocene, around 16.5 years ago, Britain and Ireland were part of the same tectonic plate. Tectonic plate or the same sheet, yeah, they were one thing, they were not separated. So it's possible that people walked over there during that time and was a little bit warmer. So it is possible that people moved over there and then started their counter-gathering culture. So that is our evidence. So now Ireland has Paleolithic times and joined the community of Europe, where pretty much most of the countries would have it. Poland is really well established in Paleolithic and Neolithic archaeological features. Mesolithic age, going further, so 8000 to 4000 BC. You have to keep in mind that the changes were happening very, very slowly. There were smooth changes, there were more natural changes. The changes happened because the environment and climate changed. And then people were following the climate changes. The climate changes were followed by nature and then by people, and nothing came very quickly. These are just general markings in the time, just for history, prehistory scholars reasons, so we can actually put everything together in a sequence in our heads, but nothing happened really fast. But anyway, in the Mesolithic age times, more people started to travel to Ireland. They were possibly quite a good sailors, and again, there would possibly come, there are theories that they possibly came from Britain. There were theories that possibly they actually bypassed Britain and came from even Mediterranean Europe or the Western Europe in their canoes sailing. Why not? We do that as well these days, and I think the paddling techniques are using all the old techniques. The good thing for the humans was the climate, that it actually got really warm. The average temperatures were much higher than now, 1 or 2 degrees. There was a lot of rain, there was a lot of forest. The whole island of Ireland was covered in pine and oak forest, and there was loads of animals, loads of rivers, lakes, fishes. Perfect condition for invasion of humans. So the people that actually started to roam were the hunter-gatherers. And if you think about them, just think about the culture in the Amazon forest, like or the Aborigines in Australia. It is this type of culture. We call it primitive, but I wouldn't. It's just different. So they would be erecting temporary shelters. They would be living on the edge of rivers. They wouldn't be still on the upland. This mound that you can see, I think it was erected much later in medieval times. It will be called a motte. So I think this is motted. Where they settled actually was on the side of the river. So you know already this picture. So This picture shows a load of post holes from many phases of usage of the site. So imagine that every few months a family will come to the side of the river and erect their shelter, and they would sleep in it, but all the production tools, fishing, everything will be done outside, and they will erect a little shelters for themselves. They would mostly travel by the rivers, lakes. They wouldn't really go as high as the forest. That would be an uplands. That would be just to hunt, and then they will come back. This is reconstruction of one of the huts. So they're like teepee-like. Very simple construction. And these are the tools that people in Mesolithic times possibly used. Well, they did use, because those finds are actually from that site in Mount Sandel on the River Ban. So they are absolutely fine flakes, knives-like, curved, and then punching ones. People would use composite tools. So, for example, they would have a wooden stick, and then we'll put in them the little cutting tools in it. And then by the end of Mesolithic times, they specialized into flint production. So they will make really like little ones, microliths, and you can actually see them just here. It's really fine craftsmanship. I can do it. Many people can do it today. Many people play reconstructions, and they're really hard to do. Also, they're super sharp. If once a flake is worked, it stays sharp. So this is a reconstruction of such site. And then if I'm talking about the Mesolithic people, so there are actually not many finds of settlements or any kind of finds from Mesolithic times. So this one would be the most known one, but there's another one on the lake in Chiquin near Korofin, south edge of the Buren, where they found stone axes, perforated deer antler. And then side on Fisher Street near Dulin, River Alui in Dulin, and they found remains of a Neolithic settlement, and in later time there was a Neolithic tomb there. So it just may suggest that there was a continuation of existence of the humans from the Mesolithic time to the Neolithic time. And then Loch Bura in County Offaly, archaeologists find tools of chert and different type of stone. Now, as I said, there are not as many remains from Mesolithic times, and archaeologists are still searching for more evidence. But in 2016, in Hermitage, Limerick, on River Shannon, archaeologists found sites with 3 pits with cremated bones, human bones. In one of them, the bones were analyzed and carbon dated, and the 3 burials were dated to be between 7,500 BC to 6,370 BC. And they were deposited within 50-60 years between. And in one of them, they found an axe, like here, a polished axe. It was actually an adze. It's a fine craftsmanship again. And then this is a reconstruction of the burial ritual. So it's Mesolithic times. It was 9,000 years ago. People already thought about their lives after, about the cremations, about their ancestors. And this actually shows a society already existing. in islands and having their own rituals. So this represents actually a pyre with a person who is buried, and they would carefully bring the ashes together and then deposit it into the pit and then cover it. And then what archaeologists found as well, what was really, really important, was that the first burial was marked by possibly a wooden post. They erected something to actually mark this burial ground. Neolithic. So the Mesolithic people are still roaming, they're keeping to the lowlands and are connected with the rivers, and they travel up the rivers and only going hunting up. So during the Neolithic times, we all know the Neolithic revolution, we all know the word. Yes, it was a huge revolution because there was a new culture coming from the west. How they came? Possibly, again, sailing, canoes, and when they travel, actually, they were very well prepared. The people were the farming people, and they brought with them animals. They brought cattle. So it was a huge revolution for the island of Ireland because they brought cattle. There was an ox in Ireland, but evidence shows that the genetical kind of pattern of the bones of the ox and the cattle were different, which means that the cattle had to travel, be imported from somewhere else. The same happened with the dog, with the pig. There was a wild boar, but it's completely different genotype again. And then what else? Farming was the big thing. They started to erect fields. They started to not even follow the nature. Now the humans were at this kind of level that they started to change the nature. And this is the big thing about humans and about this time. The climate finally stabilized and was super warm. There was plenty of forest, there was plenty of foods. People actually moved to the uplands, and now we are starting properly the upland archaeology. Why they moved to uplands? Because finally the climate stabilized and the sea level rose. So they had to actually go to uplands and started to fell the trees and plant their fields. This is a farming field dated to Neolithic times. It's a Keje field. In Ballycastle, County Mayo. And it's just on the face of a cliff. It's over 130 meters high. So we're talking about the uplands. And if you look here, you're gonna see all the straight linear lines which mark different fields. There will be a quite large community. Every farming family would have a little house, and within the little kind of dwelling would be a hut, and then they would keep their animals there, and then outside they will have a little linear field, and then they would be keeping their animals. So you can actually see the enclosure here. I'm not entirely sure if that's actually Neolithic or if it's just reconstructed. But this is the Ballycastle museum now. You can go there and visit. Actually, if you go to Google Earth, you can do it even now and search for Keje Fields, Ballycastle. You can identify all the lines. The first farmers who would use very simple plows with an art, and then at the end would be just wood, sometimes maybe stone, and they will just do a simple plowing. And you may come across something like that on the hills and then think about it. Okay, so this is a Neolithic house from motorway discoveries. I think it was Headland Archaeology who actually dug it. I don't remember where was it. I just thought it was a very good picture to actually show you the outline of a hut. So people started to erect permanent huts. They stopped their hunting and gathering lifestyle, but introduce a more permanent life. So because they had to look after the crops for a few months in the year, they will erect permanent structure, which were houses. And you can actually see the outline. They will be kind of rectangular with a heart in the center, which is the fireplace, some maybe waste pits, and then there will be sleeping places around. There will be just one simple door to get into it, and people will use the houses just for eating and sleeping place. All the production, everything will be taken outside. And then they might have erected another maybe enclosure for the animals, maybe just for like overnight or smaller animals, and then little enclosures. And then they would still use the forest because they would be relying on hunting and a little bit of forestry gathering as well. And they would be hunting for fowl as well, eat loads of fish. That's a fantastic reconstruction. It's taken from the book Irish Archaeology Illustrated from Michael Ryan. Absolutely brilliant book. And you have the reconstruction of the huts. Archaeological evidence shows that there were different types and different kinds of structure of the walls and erection of the gables as well. So yeah, but that will be the general vibe in Neolithic times. Again, they would like to be very close to the water as well. And then interesting thing is about the interaction between the Mesolithic hunter gatherers and then the Neolithic farmers. That with some, they might have very little interaction, and on many occasions, the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers might be really influenced by the Neolithic people and assimilate their cultural new ideas of farming. And the changes, again, well drawn within a very long time. So it didn't happen within a week or something. No, it was very, very long. Again, so just keep it in mind. Megalithic structures.
Just before you move on to the megalithic structures, there are a couple of raised hands. Nicola and Kevin were mentioned.
Okay.
Would you be happy to take a couple of questions, Anya?
Sure, yeah.
I live in South Donegal, and I was just wondering about, you were talking about maps for the rest of Ireland, and I was just wondering, is there any maps with more detail in them for my area? Thank you.
The maps I showed, they were not a specific map to an area. I just wanted to show what kind of mapping is available for islands, for the whole island of Ireland. So the OS mapping, and then
your best mapping resource probably is the online archaeological viewer, the historic environment viewer.
That's what I use.
I think it's probably worth checking with every local authority has a heritage officer, and usually they produce publications as well. So the heritage officer will work within Donegal County Council. And I know there are perhaps one or two other people on the event today who may know of resources for Donegal. So if you do, please post it in the chat. But otherwise, I'd suggest contacting the heritage officer.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you so much. We're finally at the megalithic structures. The new farmers, actually, they brought new ideas. They were not just farmers, they were engineers, and engineering a massive stone structure that, imagine engineer something that having very simple technology using wedges, hoists, maybe hemp ropes. I don't even know if hemp was actually cultivated at the time, but some kind of plant ropes, leverages, wood, timbers, and erecting structures that weigh maybe just the capstone or one of the stones 40 tons. This is absolutely a mind-blowing thing. It's like putting the skyscrapers now. So definitely the megalithic structures, the idea was to give a burial, to erect a burial memorandum to the whole community. So Neolithic people, they were farmers, they were looking after each other, they were family oriented and socially oriented. There was no signs of personalization. It was all kind of community based together. So the megalithic structures also somehow they made a statement back in the days, maybe also marking the spots, bringing people together. But I think the engineering part is one of the most important ones. So just imagine the population to actually, if we are talking about kind of standard picture, everybody know New Grange notes, just imagine 100 people or few hundred people, 400 people working throughout 40 years to erect all those monuments. It is a huge achievement. They have to source the material from around, bring it over, and then erect it. So how a simple a tomb or could actually look like. So the construction of megalithic tombs consisted of a main burial chamber. Again, it can have different sizes and shapes, built of stone, of course. The chamber could be connected with the outside by a passage or not. Chambers would be enclosed by upright standing stones. The chamber would be closed off by a roof constructed of flat, corbelled, overlapping stones. They would be covered by a mount and then constructed of stones. So we would see the cairn, or could be overlapped by a mount, by sod. So that will be our mounts. That's why you can actually see the cairns and the mounts. Unfortunately, these days, whatever you can, in most cases, see, is actually, if you can see so the sod and the ground might be already gone. Sometimes the stones from the cairn construction can be still visible, or they can be scattered around. And what we can see in most cases, it's just the simple construction of the chamber. And the simple construction of the chamber actually gives the names for the three kinds of megalithic structures that are known in Ireland. So there will be the court ones. So the court ones were the earliest one, and they would have like a big court at the start, and then that would be connected with the chamber. The chamber can have like a little division jump stones, and then the burned bones would be deposited in the chambers. So this table actually shows different kind of court cairns. They were kind of a trapezoid shape with the entrance at the bigger part. So imagine a big influx of people standing at the court, and everybody is welcomed or talk about important things. Maybe some, well, not just that somebody died, but maybe they had a big dispute about land or trying to decide about something really important in the community. And then they will come to the passage. And the passages were usually huge, like in the New Grange. So they can contain many people, and many people could take turns to go in there and visit the dead. Montagora Court tomb in Ringullion. To be honest, Ringullion is one of my favorites for megalithic structures, because if you go there, it's Northern Ireland for everybody. So if you go there, actually you can have a spectrum of all the megalithic structures. So the courts, portal tombs, passage tombs, stone circles as well, and the wedge tombs. So it is absolutely brilliant if you want to see in life and learn more about archaeology. So that's the example of the court tombs. What you can see here is the large court. So imagine containing quite a big gathering of people, and then the entrance to the passage, and then going into the chamber. And this all just above the entrance would be covered by a massive mount. So this mount would be actually seen from far. So the first megalithic structures were actually a little bit lower. They don't have to be necessary on the uplands, but it happens as well that they are on the uplands. So Clontegora, the king of the kings, Ringulian. So the passage had a little bit of a different construction. So the passage tomb was missing the court part. So that might reflect a change in the society as well. Maybe not everybody was welcomed, or maybe there was something creating an elite or structure of more important people that only them could actually go into the passage, just where smaller gatherings allowed. Construction is similar. Again, it's the entrance, and the entrance or the chamber is actually constructed by a portal stones, and then a big capstone, and then inside the chamber can be lined up with another level of stones inside, and then the cremated remains of humans will be put in there. And then again, there could be everybody, there could be children, adults, women, men, everybody. Again, the life expectancy in Neolithic times wasn't much bigger than in Mesolithic times. Possibly people living till 30 was as highest. Possibly anybody who was older was taken as, you know, the older part, the wise part in the community. The first culture tombs are actually represented mostly in the northern islands, just above Clifden and Dundalk and going up. They are known from southern parts of Ireland. And then the passage tombs started to come a little bit lower. That might reflect on society or trading trends, meeting people. So this is a Creevy Keel passage. Apologies again for my for pronunciation of some of the monuments. They're actually quite hard to pronounce for me, and I'm aware that actually they're supposed to sound completely different. Okay, so this is absolutely fantastic construction. So imagine the mount, the cairn, it's stripped, and what we can see is just the inside of the 1, 2, 3 chambers. And the chambers are actually nicely divided as well. So you're going to the main one, this is the entrance, then you go to the big opening in the chamber, and human remains could be deposited in one of the kind of niches there. Nicely, and then you will go to another one and another one. Okay. This is one of my favorites because it's in Wicklow Mountains and I can get there very, very easily. So it's a Siffin gun. There's actually few passage tombs that you can actually go into. So that's what people will come across usually on Irish hills. You can actually go inside and have a look. That's Naut's passage tomb, and then little mount around. Legany portal tomb, that's from Northern Ireland, very close to Castle Welland. This is only a drawing, kind of interpretation of it, but you can actually see the idea of the portal tomb. You have 2 pillars at the front and a small pillar at the back, and the entrance would be marked by the heavier part, larger part of the capstone of the slab, and it would be a little bit slanty. And then the chamber again would be lined up by another row of stones inside. So imagine, again, it should be covered by a cairn or a mount, and it will be quite large and visible from far away. The entrance to it sometimes will be marked by little stones at the front, and also there will be like a big but movable slab, so people could visit their ancestors or add new people. Another example is from Clare Pulnabrone, one of the most representative. Again, imagine this is just like a skeleton structure. Imagine there was the whole mount above it. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet is the access, and it is really important part. Most of the archaeological sites I'm talking about are easily accessible. Easily accessible meaning that you can just pick them up and make a route and get there. But sometimes there are car parks and visitor centers, and they will be entrance will be kind of ticketed or not. But the other important thing is that the access is given to us from the landowners and the private landowners, the farmers. And especially, I would like to say, especially these days, when we are still fighting COVID, the virus, it is important to be respectful and responsible, and don't take the access as given as well, because it's just their goodwill. So yes, they are the national monuments, but we don't really have the right of way. So it is important that everybody respects the owners too. There's so much to talk, guys, like for example, the alignment of some of the passage tombs, and that's absolutely something exciting, and many of you know and maybe witness it. I'm talking about the alignment of the chambers or the passages. So some of the passages like passage tomb in Naut, and then Siffingan, and also the Ring of Gullion passage tombs are aligned to the rising sun, but during the winter. So you can actually go there and observe or witness the winter solstice there, because the entrances are facing southeast. For a couple of days during the winter solstice, you can actually witness it. And as Newgrange is ticketed and there's a long list, you can actually go to the Ring of Gullion or go to Siffingan and witness it. It's absolutely magnificent. So it's good to know. So talking about the engineering again, people in Neolithic times, they would be absolutely brilliant. There would be people like us. Maybe they didn't have the electronics and internet, but they had different technology already, and they were using it. They were really knowledgeable. They were looking at the stars because they were farmers. They knew that the passing seasons were really significant to them. And they were really in tune with the nature and passing times. So it wasn't just the engineering, it was combination of the ritual, astronomical knowledge. It's a big thing, it's magnificent. I'm speechless. The best rock art can be actually found in the passage tomb. I don't know if this is some kind of significance. If you go to La Creux visitor center now, but previously it was open and you could just roam through the fields. If you go to Newgrange, of course, that contains, I think, the largest amount of rock art maybe in the world. It's Naut, okay. Yeah. If you go, the crop marks and then what we call the rock art, it's actually everywhere in Ireland, and sometimes you can find it on an outcrops, sandstone, for example, lying in the grass. There are places in Sligo and Kerry that are devoted to it, and there's like 14, 15 slabs just with the rock art. And then the interpretation of the marks is different. There are places like in Newgrange, even in Naut and Doubt, that have completely different or a little bit different kind of art and different patterns. Some of them are more circular, some of them maybe represent stars, maybe this represents waters and rivers, maybe sun and moon, mountain tops, maybe they're connected with astronomy. So there are different interpretations. It's actually worth to read about it. What's really important is that when the next people who came in Bronze Age, they were already 1,000 years behind from the first megalithic structures, and sometimes for them it would feel like this was something ancient. This was something that maybe they couldn't understand as well. Another nice fact, which I absolutely love about Ireland and the rich heritage and legends, is connected with the names of the places and the structures. So, for example, Lacru would be called the Hill of the Witch, and then you can actually go and visit the Hag's Chair. Some of the tombs would be called as well as a Hag's Bed, Hag's Chair, Hag's Resting Place, or a Tooth, or something like some of the peaks in the mountains. So yeah, there's just so many layers of culture in them, layered, sedimented, like archaeological layers over many thousands of years. That's more art from the Newgrange passage, and then my pronunciation again, Derina Bahala Ivera. I know it's horrible, sorry, apologies, but you can actually see a different crop marks. They are called cap and ring. Yeah, so simple, cap and ring marks. And then you can see something like lozenges, sorry. Yeah. So another place in Dingle. Oh, this is really important. This is really important to me, because this is a fragment of ornamented stone that was actually used as a capstone in a souterrain. So this is definitely a megalithic art, and it was reused as a capstone in a souterrain. Souterrain were underground passages, and they were created starting in early medieval times, and they were created in ring forts as refugee place, as an escape routes, or for storing food, something that can perish quickly, or for holding something that is really precious. And of course the escape passage. They will be hidden underneath the ground. So this is from Lismulin, and I was working on the site, I don't know, maybe around 2007, 2008. So that's the capstone. And you can see that's the size of the souterrain. It's a drawing of it, yeah. So it's quite large. If that's the scale of 20 meters, it took maybe, what, 100 by 100 meters. Quite large. 3 chambers, passages, the entrance. The important thing about the souterrains is that you come and then it will change the level of the passage. Some souterrains are as big, so you can stand there. Most of them you have to crawl a little bit, especially through the entrance. Absolutely brilliant work, but I'm gonna show you later if there's time. So this is the capstone here. The art here, it was just reused. I think it's a great example of how people just use the different kind of traces of earlier human evidence, not even knowing or maybe even caring that it was something. Maybe they didn't have the understanding that in the early Middle Ages of what the stone represents. and maybe they did. Okay. Wedge tombs were the third different types of megalithic tombs. They were a little bit lower, and then the shape will be like a trapeze with the wider part at the start and a higher roof, and then they will nicely gradually come down. And then sometimes the entrance would be marked by stones at the front, and then it will be just a chamber that you go in and deposit the burnt remains of people. And which comes?
Anya, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Something that came up in the chat there from Graham Connolly. Graham is wondering what happened to the covering over the passage tombs and presumably also the wedge tombs. And do we know for certain that they were covered?
We actually do know for certain that they were covered, but if you think about it, they're already 6,000, 4,000 years old. So many things happened, like farming and settlements and wars, that sometimes the soil, the sod, eroded naturally. Generally people in Middle Ages or post-medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, 19th century, 18th century, people had no knowledge of what the mounds are. And unfortunately, but in many cases, they were completely taken apart. Unfortunately, plowing, building, destroyed many. But for example, in Poland, in the communistic Poland, the government didn't want to know what were the tombs, where the origins of Polish people. So they were plowing and destroying everything, bulldozering, keeping just level in the ground. And I'm not saying that the same happened here, but it's just sometimes not having an understanding or curiosity about it, or can actually damage it. So we do know for certain that they were all covered by a mound. Sometimes it wasn't a big mound. Towards the late Neolithic times and then going towards the Bronze Age, the mounds and cairns tend to be smaller and smaller. So the size changes as well. And the smaller the monument, the tomb, the easier just disappears. And then we have to actually remember that they were exposed as well. And maybe there is the sedimentation of leaves, of soil, of grasses. The sedimentation builds on, which is really visible in domestic places and cities, but it happens in the forest and uplands as well. So yeah, they just got destroyed somehow, either by nature or most likely human activity.
Thanks, Anya.
Answer your question.
I guess one of the things that's notable is that because there's less intensive agriculture, less ploughing in the uplands, even though there may have been fewer sites there, they are perhaps more intact than some in the more intensively farmed land. Some fantastic feedback on the chat. People have found it really interesting, and certainly much demand for further sessions, Anya, for sure. I'd just like to say thanks very much. I learned a lot. I enjoyed it. And I think you showed really well the value of curiosity amongst hill walkers and climbers, and how there is the potential for us to make finds, and also how that being inquisitive, we can look at the landscape differently and try and figure out, at least question what might have happened there in the past. I think it's also exciting that aerial imagery is allowing new finds to be made. Gives us a sense that there's more yet to learn.
Yes.
So it does feel like we're putting together a jigsaw with about 3 pieces out of 1,000 or something. And there have been some interesting and useful resources put up in the chat as well. So if you haven't been looking there, maybe take a look.
Yeah.
Things like the archaeological inventory for every county. There is one as far as I know.
Perfect.
You can access them through the library, and somebody pointing out that, you know, library staff will have specialist knowledge as well, and perhaps it's worth even making an appointment, going in if you want to do a bit of research on an area that you're familiar with.
Guys, I would really like to thank you to everybody for tuning in. As Helen said, I really hope that I inspired you to looking at hill walking and climbing in a different way.